Hey, it's Eleanor. In today's episode, I'm going to share the power of being non-receptive. Yes, the power of actually being a little closed-minded. Now, I know this sounds crazy because open-mindedness is one of my sort of core values as a human, or one of the traits that I value most in people. But there is incredible power of intentionally closing down your openness to external stimulus so that you can reduce overwhelm, hear yourself think, and create an extraordinary business. In this episode, I'll share how. Let's go.
So here's the question. In a world where the rules of business have been written by men, how do women entrepreneurs like us, women who want to make millions of dollars and impact millions of lives, how do we create enormous success on our terms? That's the question, and this show explores the answers. Welcome to Power Presence Position. I'm your host, Eleanor Beaton, and I'm on a mission to double the number of women entrepreneurs who generate over $1 million per year in annual revenue. I'm an award-winning entrepreneur, author, and leadership coach. I'm a wife, mom of 2 boys, and I'm the CEO of a 7-figure business. Stick around because on this show, you'll learn how to think, communicate, and get paid like a 7-figure CEO. Let's go.
Hey, my friends. So as you're listening to this episode, I am on vacation with my family in Mexico. Oh my gosh, I am so excited to get out into the sun. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. So I'm getting some podcasts prepared for you ahead of time. And as I was thinking about today's show, I really wanted to share something that has become increasingly precious and important to me, and this is the power of being non-receptive. So there's periods in my business development and personal development where I have been completely open to ideas, to stimulus, to ways of doing things. And that has served me really well. And I find that that level of openness serves you really, really well, often in the beginning of a journey, potentially. But I also know and have come to realize that there is a power in closing down stimulus and being very, very careful about what stimulus, whose opinions, whose voices you are actually open to. And so in this podcast, I want to talk about that. You know, as women founders, we have heard a lot of advice about staying open, and the idea of staying open has probably served us incredibly well in all kinds of different areas of our life. And we're told to stay open-minded in general. And specifically, we're encouraged to stay open to feedback, open to discomfort, open to new ideas, open to different ways of doing things, open to challenges. We're supposed to stay open, open, open. Being a good leader, we're told, means staying super open. It doesn't matter what's going on in your world, they say. You must find your inner zen and be open. And here lies one of the biggest challenges for us. With all this openness, it's no wonder that the defining challenge of modern womanhood is overwhelm. We are told to allow in so much stimulus that stimulus compounds the overwhelm that we might already feel or already need to navigate and work with as we build out 7-figure businesses and become the women that we need to be in the process. We live in a world of 24/7 news, nonstop notifications. So staying open in this world is a great way to drive yourself crazy, or let's face it, suffer the more likely event of allowing others to do the job for you. Now, I'm going to go out there on a limb and tell you what I really think, which is that I personally have found that staying open is stupid advice 75% of the time. So, for example, having a quote unquote open door policy is supposed to be a signal to the world that you are approachable. When in fact, having an open door policy is a great way to demonstrate to the world that you lack boundaries, that you don't value your time, and that you have surrounded yourself with people who really need to work on their self-advocacy skills. Being open to feedback is great, But any creator knows that receiving too much feedback at the wrong time can stifle original thought, water down fledgling initiatives, and transform fun 2-day projects into months-long behemoths that go nowhere. It's like Henry Ford said, if he had asked for quote unquote feedback, he would still be trying to make a faster horse. And actually, I shouldn't say quote unquote feedback because that's not what he said. I don't think he used that term, but that's what he meant. Now, closely related to staying open are what I would call misinformed segments of the sacred feminine police who will tell you that feminine energy is all about receiving and openness, and therefore you must remain open to signs from the universe. And signs from the universe that I would argue you might not hear as a direct consequence of being open to Instagram, the news, other people's advice, what Brene Brown's most recent book is on, what people think about you, and so on. The trouble with staying open, especially for those of us who are sensitive, myself included, is that being open, the ability to really deeply connect and stay open to what people are saying and also what they're not saying, being open to new ideas that we read in books or things that we hear, Simon Sinek say, whatever. The challenge is that too much openness can be really, really draining for a sensitive person. And I really started to notice this, especially, as a coach working with people. And so I would always do a lot of work to really sort of ground and release stuff after sessions as I started building my team and there's more people there to think through, to kind of do that work with and balance being open with not being too open, right? It can become incredibly draining. So whereas I'd spent, the first part of my life really honing my skills on openness, I have found that increasingly I have had to hone my skills on being non-receptive. And that protects my energy, but it also protects my creativity, my strategy, and those are the things that also really contribute greatly to growing the business and having an impact. So I've really learned how to consciously close down. Now, closing down gets a super bad rap these days. For instance, people will say, I tried to bring up that issue with Darla and she just closed right down. So closing down to external input is supposed to be a bad thing in our culture, and it's supposed to be something that people who just haven't done their work do. Like, oh, she's so closed down. Clearly she hasn't been in therapy. Clearly she hasn't been in coaching. Clearly she hasn't read her personal development books. And listen, sometimes that's true. Like sometimes, we ourselves, or we've seen it in others, we see people who are suffering because they're not open. They're not open to discomfort. They're not open to feedback. And I'm not addressing this in this episode because I don't think that that's something that most of us here struggle with, to be honest. I think we struggle with the opposite, which is being too open. So I want to share a little rule that I have for myself. And it's that I am totally down to be open 30% of the time, if that. Like sometimes it's a really smart thing to close down your external inputs, like really close down what you allow into your world so you can focus on your inner world and go on living your life in your lane, doing your thing. Let me give you an example. I think about it like decluttering. So one of the challenges with decluttering is that you declutter and it creates space and it can create a vacuum. And then if you open yourself up to all kinds of purchasing, you clutter your space back up right over again. So many of us are doing the work to eliminate belief patterns that have held us back, to release, patterns of self-image that allow us to step into a new self-image that we can grow from that place. We are releasing things that we tolerated, habits. We might be releasing weight. We might be releasing offers. We might be releasing marketing strategies that don't work. So we're doing a lot of releasing, right? And then if we are 100% open to external stimulus, that space that we have created, if we haven't learned how to close down, the space that you create becomes a vacuum, not a space, right? And so then you just start filling in with the next big thing. And how this shows up is a lack of trust in your own leadership, in your own voice. You're constantly looking outside yourself, So for sure, in all of the coaching that we do, I was leading a lesson on team building the other day, and I was like, remember, anytime we teach anything in this program, we are teaching as fellow gladiators in the ring, and that you always, as a founder, need to retain your sovereignty, right? Like you need to approach any learning and anything that we share here from a place of sovereignty. You need to run it through your own system and ask yourself, am I going to take advantage of this? Am I going to use this? Or is this not useful to me? And I think this is so key, by the way. I think because women have been trained and raised to be so incredibly open, I really believe and have come to found that as you are coaching and working with women in that way, it's so important to really set a container of sovereignty and really give permission and put into the space that you can be closed, like really key. So let's talk about a couple of strategies to help you close down. So the first is that you can close your eyes, get really present in your body, and consciously do what I call closing down the chakras. And I know this is not like technically accurate. And, those of you who really understand chakras, which I don't superbly, but will say, well, actually, there's some you want to keep open. And I totally get that. So this is not a lesson in chakras in any way, but this is what I call it to myself. Like I have a daily practice of just kind of checking in, getting centered, and I will just kind of have the intention of releasing anything from my system that's not mine, like any beliefs, any insecurities that got planted in there unwittingly, any ideas that don't serve me, any advice that wasn't useful. There's all kinds of that. And none of this, or, not much of it is happening maliciously. It just comes from being a human in the world. So I will sit there and literally request that all of that gets released. And then I will consciously start to close down my receptors so that they're 30% open. And this has been one of the most powerful tools I have learned to really help me prevent overwhelm, hear myself think, and friggin' execute a plan that I created, instead of getting sidelined and distracted. So really, really huge. Maybe that's useful for you. You can set up guidelines for social media use. I mean, that's a huge one. You can ask an assistant or hire an assistant to support you in handling things like email. And one of the challenges that things like email and social media have are that they bring in a ton of external stimulus and opinions, right? And sometimes it's great to have that, especially from people that you trust and teachings and advice that are anchored in values that you resonate with. But sometimes they are a big distraction. You can train yourself in being okay to not respond to people. That's kind of related to this idea of email, that people really respect an instant response. And so I can send a text to somebody right away, and I've all of a sudden gotten into their space because I have an expectation that they respond right away. And so I just choose to not participate in that, which is why sometimes when people email me, they're not going, they might not get a response. And the reason is, and so I have, team members who support, but I also don't want to hire people to exacerbate a problem that I haven't dealt with. So non-responsiveness can be okay. In our company, we use filters. So one of the things, it's interesting, we just have a new person working with us, and I was asking her how, her first couple of weeks were. This was a couple of weeks back. And she said, it's people here work in a really focused way. Everybody's just kind of focused, like when you look at the company Slack channels, they're not lighting up. And it was really cool to see that. And it's true. And it's because I've created it in that way. So I think a lot of modern work and things that masquerade as collaboration and co-creation are actually people distracting each other, So we totally have time. We have 2 stand-ups a week. And those are sort of for light updates, but they're also really about just being together and kind of talking and laughing and just having idle time together, which is so valuable for teams. But a lot of times, for instance, when people have ideas, they have new ideas that they want to run by me. Like this is the kind of thing that really can light up a Slack channel with unproductive thoughts. So they put them into filters. Like, here's my idea. Here's why I think this is a good idea. Here's how it would work. And here's what my implementation plan would look like. And here are my next steps. And here's what I need from you and when, right? It really forces everybody to really think through. And I do the same thing when I'm delegating something to someone. So when I'm delegating something to someone, I'm also going to create a filter. So I'm not just going to throw them, hey, I need your help with X, unless it's super basic. In general, I'm going to put together a thoughtful, here's what I'd like you to do. Here's why it's important. I may have specifics about how I want it done. So there could be things that are important to me that happen, So for instance, if it were about creating an event, I might say, I want a venue in this particular space, or I want to find a venue in this particular section of town. Got it? Like I'm not trying to micromanage people, but if I have clear expectations or clear desires, that's where you put it out. And then here's when I need to hear back from you on this. And here are the milestones. Like, here's what I need to see and when. So it really creates and promotes focus. And it also cuts down on needless distraction. So, I've really designed our company and culture that way. And it really creates an environment where people can work without being always on and always open. So as we kind of wrap up, I want to share that being a good person, being a good leader, being a good entrepreneur do not mean that you need to be open all the time. You don't even need to be open most of the time. You can choose your moments. And I find that choosing my moments and having moments where, okay, in this conversation, I'm going to be completely open to hearing everything this person has to say, and sometimes I'll take time and sort of like reflect on how things have been going and ask myself, what of all of the things that I've heard and all of the things that I've been a part of over the last weeks, what do I need to really pay attention to and listen to? So I really choose those moments. And it has been really, really powerful in terms of helping me stay grounded and focused and really, being very connected to my vision and being connected and not distracted from executing really good plans. All right. I hope you found this useful. Have a beautiful week, everybody. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye. If you love this show, then you will love even more my missives, i.e., my emails. If you're not on my email list yet, I strongly encourage you to sign up at eleanorbeaton.com/join. Now, when you go and sign up for my email list, you will quickly discover why some of the most popular, well-known, and influential voices in the world of women's entrepreneurship quietly, studiously, consistently open every single email I send out because they want to be inspired, they want to be entertained, and also I think they really want to connect with a woman like myself who's in full command of her voice and is willing to open up and share her thinking, her ideas, and her story. I promise you that on this email list, you are going to be entertained. You are going to hear really valuable tips about stepping into your power as a leader. And you're also going to get fun insight that I do not share anywhere else. Go to eleanorbeaton.com/join. And I promise you it will be the highlight of your inbox.